Hare Krishna. My most humble obeisances to all of you. Hare Krishna.
So please accept a warm welcome, Mataji, and a heartful gratitude for joining and giving your valuable time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And let me chant a few prayers just briefly. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarindam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all so much for inviting me, and thank you. I'll try to share some thoughts with you today about chanting japa. I've noticed when I'm hearing or reading the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, the residents of Vraj always seem to dwell in a state of astonishment or amazement at Krishna's wonderfulness from moment to moment. Once Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is super excellent. Your Krishna is simply wonderful. So Srila Prabhupada would dwell in that mood of amazement, and the residents of Vrindavan as well. And in the spiritual world, these pastimes happen again and again. Kaliya gets chastised again and again. Krishna lifts the Govardhan mountain again and again. He steals the butter again and again. But there's always this mood of purvarag, or a mood of the devotees never having seen it before. It doesn't become hackneyed. It doesn't become dull. The Vrindavan devotees are astonished and amazed as though they've never seen this pastime before. So I'm wondering, have you noticed this before? Have any of you noticed this before? When we read the stories of the pastimes of Krishna, there's always Nanda Maharaj is astonished and amazed, and they're all amazed and amazed. So I just want to make the point that this astonishment or surprise is really the beginning of gratitude. And gratitude implies humility as well. And so my question to myself and to all of you is, can we also try to chant our japa in this mood of never having chanted even one mantra ever before? As though for the very first time, in humility and in gratitude and even a bit of amazement, offering each flower, offering each mantra as each one as though it's a flower to offer to the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna in the form of their holy name. Have you ever noticed that when I chant my japa, sometimes I notice that these individual japa beads, each one looks kind of like a mogra flower. Have you ever noticed that? It's kind of, those tulsi beads are kind of shaped like a mogra flower when it's just in the bud form, or jasmine flower. So can I more consciously offer each flower-like japa bead to the lotus feet of Krishna's holy name? Yeah, and I was thinking that once on the disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada's guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada gathered up all the letters of gratitude that he'd received from his disciples, and he offered them to a picture of his Guru Maharaj that was on the altar, just as though they were flowers. Such a beautiful thing. Srila Prabhupada took all those letters and put them on the altar in front of his Guru Maharaj, just like they were flowers. So if we're also reaching out to others, can we also lovingly offer those souls to Srila Prabhupada, to Sri Guru and Gauranga, just like they are the flowers of our outreach? You know, if I meet someone, can I say that little prayer and offer them, just like I'm offering each mantra on my Japa Mala. The first chapter of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is called The First Step in God Realization. When somebody begins to recognize that God is everywhere in his universal form, in nature and all around us. And I was thinking that perhaps the second step in God realization is when we can appreciate all of his merciful manifestations and pause to express our gratitude and offer our love back to him. In material consciousness, we're more or less jaded in this mood that, oh, I've done this 100 times with no effect. And I have kind of a bored or distracted or apathetic mentality. So my question, again, to me and to all of you is, can we wake up to a consciousness of a more alive gratefulness, chanting each mantra as though it's the very first one? Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for crisscrossing the 7 oceans and 7 seas 13 times, coming to the West and then back again to India to give us Krishna's holy name. And you know, in India, people were taking it for granted. Like, oh yes, I know Krishna. I've known Bhagavad Gita since I was a child. In other words, having a kind of a jaded attitude. And once Srila Prabhupada, in reference to this type of attitude, Srila Prabhupada very boldly said, but Krishna is not so cheap that he can be purchased or in your pocket just with that kind of a jaded attitude. Srila Prabhupada had to leave India and bring Krishna's holy name and Bhagavad Gita back again from outside, along with us dancing white elephants, as he called us, in order for people to take it seriously and see what he was presenting to them with new eyes, right? He had to leave and come back, and then people all of a sudden saw what he was offering with new eyes. And they were surprised, right? The people of India and all those pandals, we hear the stories of these amazing pandals with 25,000 people, and they were, you know, thinking and commenting that how is it that Western people are appreciating this Krishna consciousness that we've known here in India for centuries. My grandmother, my grandfather used to do this. Maybe I should take another look at it myself, you know? So I'm just making the point. I'm kind of drawing a contrast here between the grateful attitude, awakened gratefulness, and the kind of proud or disinterested or disassociated, jaded, ungrateful chanting of Japa or Bhagavad Gita, or this same mentality that might come into our other services that we perform. It's really our insidious enemy and the killer of our bhakti. And an awakened gratitude is the sign of an elevated person's greatness. And ungratefulness is a sign of a lowly person's unworthiness. And even Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives his very self as charity when a sincere devotee makes a simple offering of tulsi and water. And Krishna is celebrated as for giving the evil Putana the exalted position, right, of his own nursemaid in Goloka, even though she was such a deceptive cheater, and she was just imitating the mood of a loving mother. So how grateful should we be to such a loving Lord who makes himself even more accessible in his holy name. So my point is that one who is great will be grateful, and Bhakti Devi will not appear in an ungrateful heart. Krishna discusses yajna, or sacrifice, in so many places in Bhagavad Gita. But what does yajna, or sacrifice, really mean? It means to give back in gratitude. And what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Yajnanam japa yajyosmi. Of all sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names, japa. So thank you, Krishna, for making yourself so accessible in your holy name. Thank you for providing the sunlight and the moonlight and the fire. I didn't create these sacred elements that sustain my life. They're all your gifts. So thank you for another day today, another chance to try again, to chant your holy name in attentive gratefulness, as though I'm hearing and chanting these sacred syllables for the very first time. So we all just completed the holy month of Kartik, where we learn that our own best efforts will always come up 2 fingers too short, right? And that those 2 fingers represent our own endeavors and Krishna's saving grace, right? So I'm thinking that what is really the impetus for us to try our best? You know, those 2 fingers, right? Us trying our best and Krishna's grace. But what is the impetus for actually trying our best and not being so lackadaisical, lazy, bored, disassociated? I would say that the impetus to trying our best is gratefulness, our gratefulness. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Krishna. And here is the most precious gift that I can offer back to you. And what would you think is that most precious gift? My attention, right? Like sometimes you hear stories about children in rich families and their parents are busy at their high-powered jobs and they're buying them every type of new latest gadget and latest toy. But the children are not happy because why? They're not getting their parents' attention. So the most precious thing we can offer back to Krishna in gratefulness for all his gifts is our attention. Yeah, my attempt, Lord Sri Krishna, my attempt at loving you back. So I believe that gratitude is a pivot point where we can make a real shift from our material consciousness and begin to glimpse an awakening of spiritual consciousness. What was the awakened gratitude of Akrura as he entered Vrindavan? What was the ecstatic surprise of Uddhava when he realized that his knowledge was insufficient and that the love of the simple cowherd girls of Vrindavan was so much greater than his own? And out of his aliveness and gratitude, his humility awakened, and he prayed to live in Vraj eternally as a grass or a creeper so that the residents there could trample on him as they walked in and out. And then what is the astonishment of the Vrajabasis every day, from moment to moment? They're just in this amazed and astonished consciousness at every moment for everything Krishna does, right? So in conclusion, I'm just suggesting that if we can try to chant each mantra each day as though we are hearing and chanting it for the very first time, calling out from our hearts, thanking Krishna with a grateful heart, we can begin to notice some kind of inkling of awakening, some transformation in our consciousness. The poet William Blake said that a grateful heart is heaven itself. So what does that mean? It means that gratitude can transport us beyond the material realm to a more divine and heavenly way of being. So what do you all think? Can we also try for this, even if we fail 100 times? Can this be our little goal in our daily practice, to try and try again? So these are a few thoughts on chanting japa in an ever new consciousness. Thank you all so very, very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so very much, Mataji, on raising this. Such a wonderful core of our jaded attitude is being ungrateful always. And that is the reason why we feel bored, we feel distracted, because of not realizing what we have got, what we have received from our Shri Guru and Acharyas and Gauranga. So we always think about it, that lack of gratitude is the core reason why we are taking everything casually and not realizing the importance of it. But today, hearing it from your lotus mouth, it is really piercing the heart today. So thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you very much.
Mataji, if you allow, can we take some few questions from the group?
Sure. Okay.
Yes. So please feel free to ask questions from Mataji. I'll just, okay. Yes, Damodar Prabhu, what's your question?
हरे कृष्णा माता जी, हरे कृष्णा मैम। माता जी क्वेश्चन ये है कि 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 ये 10 10 पुत्र कौन थे?
क्या कौन थे?
10 पुत्र कौन थे, उनका नाम क्या है? मैं नाम नहीं पता मेरे को उनका।
मैं आपका क्वेश्चन समझ नहीं पाया, एक मिनट थोड़ी देर में लेता हूँ आपका क्वेश्चन। श्वेता माता जी, आपका क्वेश्चन क्या है? आप लिख के भेज दीजिए प्रभु जी।
Hi, Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much for this wonderful class that really helped to understand the importance of gratitude, because gratitude is very, very important, the mood of gratitude while chanting. Mataji, my question is, it was very interesting in the beginning how you told that Nanda Maharaj was always astonished in the pastimes of Krishna. So it brought me to the question, how can we really develop the mood of astonishment while chanting with the mood of gratitude? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful question. Such an important question. Yeah, I think we have to take it more slowly. I think we're all, or at least I can speak for myself, we tend to be so much in a rush all the time. Oh, I did this, now I do this, and now I do this, and not really being present for anything. But to take a deep breath when we sit down and chant our japa, make sure our smartphone or dumb phone, whatever phone we have, is somewhere far away in another room, in a safe locked cabinet or something like that, and just really make that sacred time the most important time in our day. This is my sacred offering to Krishna, and to really make that time uninterrupted, and to pray for that. I think when we try to do something impossible, we have to pray for grace from above, right? So there's that beautiful verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Katanchana smrite yasmin tustaram sukaram bhavet vismritam viparitam syat Shri Chaitanya namami tam. I think that's it. So, when we want to do something impossible, we all know Srila Prabhupada said impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary, but this feels very impossible. If my crazy, wild mind, monkey mind, could actually focus on the holy name as each mantra, as though I've never heard it before, like in that mood of the Brajavasis, that Purva Rag, it seems so impossible. But if we lean into grace and beg Krishna that this is what I want, more than, so many things of this material world, this is what I want. Please gift me with this grace to be able to focus on your holy name. I think we'll get that reciprocation, because, I always like to say Krishna's sitting in our hearts, and he's kind of unemployed if we don't call out to him. He's, just waiting for us to turn to him. So we turn to so many other places. But we have to turn to him and beg him to help us with those impossible prayers and desires. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, Mataji, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, Draupadi Karuna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much. Like you devotees of Srila Prabhupada are real heroes and heroines for us. We are really very fortunate to have your darshan to all of you every time. Mataji, my question is like, yes, like I'm talking about myself that I am actually ungrateful for whatever we are getting from Srila Prabhupada's disciples and Srila Prabhupada. But still, so many times we try our level. I try my level best, but still, in one way or other, not perfectly doing. Mataji, I know that Srila Prabhupada also has given lots of love to you and also giving to us through our acharyas and all his disciples. But how we can do something more? Like with what we cannot do actually. What exactly we have to do?
So Mataji, the question is, how can we develop our attitude of gratitude even more intensely?
Yeah. Well, gratitude is really more than an attitude. It's a conscious living. It's the difference between being alive and being dead. So we have to pray for it. We have to cry for it. And every time our mind wanders away, like, maybe many of you are mothers or fathers. So when you have a little 2-year-old child who's pulling on your sari, mommy, 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 let's go play. We have to tell that child, 2-year-old childlike mind, childish mind is more correct, childish mind, to say, no, we'll talk about that later. Just like you would say to a little child, we'll talk about that later. But right now we're going to be committed to hearing Krishna's name for the very first time. Just like a loving, patient mother would try to teach a little child who wants to run in the street, right? So we don't let that wild child run into the street. We have to say, sit down. Right now we're chanting. We can talk about that later. Maybe that's helpful. Maybe some of you are moms or dads.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you. This is such a wonderful realization. We always heard that attitude of gratitude, but the way Your Grace mentioned, it's not just an attitude, it's a difference between a conscious person and an unconscious dead person. That's the difference between being a grateful and ungrateful person. Thank you so much, Mataji. Each word is so nectarian and so priceless. Yes, Juhi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna Mataji, just going back to the conversation right now on gratitude and children, how do we inculcate that for the children? Because if I'm doing my japa, if I'm doing anything, they say children learn by seeing, but typically that doesn't happen in their presence. I try to finish everything by the time they come from school, and then, we get on with daily activities. So they're so entitled to their children that they don't feel gratitude. How do we bring that into their lives?
Mm-hmm. Teach them a generous spirit of helping others. That's the really, really powerful thing. If they can learn some selfless service from the beginning of their lives, like yesterday I was at our temple, and I was noticing that some of the moms and dads who were serving the prasadam had their kids helping. The kids were holding the plates, or the kids were doing this or doing that. So teaching them to do some humble service from the very beginning will inculcate those moods in them. And I think we all tend to stay up too late at night, a big heavy meal at night, and then staying up too late. And it becomes very difficult to get up early in the morning when you can actually focus before the kids are awake. So that's such a sacred time, those those hours while the kids are still resting. And then, I think really the answer to your question is that our children will love what we love. Just like you can hammer on them to practice piano, but they're not going to love piano music if you don't love it, or harmonium or mridanga, so they're not going to love kirtan unless they see that love of kirtan in their own family. So I think that's the best answer, that our children will love what we love. And it's not about telling them, but it's being an example of love and service in different ways. If they see that my mom and my dad are always willing to do some humble service, or to help some devotee with some kindness, to reach out to someone who's suffering, because there's always someone suffering, right? Suffering and pain and grief is all around us. There's always someone in our communities who's lost someone, who needs some prasadam brought over, or needs a helping hand. Or sometimes, actually, I was reading some research that two different people may have equal amounts of stress in their lives. But when someone has some friend that they can turn to, of course, Krishna, first and foremost, but that's also other devotees, when they know that there's someone there who they can turn to, or someone is just checking on them. Are you all right? Is there anything I can do? Or just to be there, that person will be able to handle stress in a way that won't become toxic in their lives. So we can all be there for each other in our communities. And that's what I call radical personalism. And I think Srila Prabhupada was the greatest example of radical personalism. Do I have time for a little story?
Yes, Mataji, surely.
Okay, I'll tell a story that I really like. So in New York, when they had their first initiation, there was one young man who was doing some typing work for Srila Prabhupada, and he was invited to take part in the first initiation. At that time, his name was Stephen, and but he was a very humble person, and he didn't feel qualified, so he didn't show up for that initiation that he was invited to attend. But the next night, he brought his completed typing work to Srila Prabhupada's apartment, as he would do every week. He would deliver the completed typing work. And he knocked on Srila Prabhupada's door, and Srila Prabhupada came to the door and took the typing work from him. And he looked at him, Srila Prabhupada looked at him, and he said, in such a simple and authentic way, Srila Prabhupada said, "If you love me, I'll love you. If you love me, I'll love you." So Srila Prabhupada was giving such a lesson that this is not about some kind of mechanical, check the boxes and, do something in a mechanical way without offering our hearts. But he was asking him, he later became Satsvarupa Das Goswami. So he was asking him to, I'm giving my heart to you. You give your heart to me, and we can exchange. And these are the beautiful, loving exchanges that we're all longing for, really, in Krishna consciousness. So I hope that's helpful. Something about kids. Something.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you. Yes, Ishan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna Gurudev, Dandavat Pranam. Mataji, my question is and whenever whenever I'm going to start doing chanting, so in my mind, one thing is set up. Okay, I need to complete the 16 rounds by 2 hours. So, and that way, I'm not able to get that gratitude which you are talking about. Lack of gratitude is there. So, how I can more focus on, you told, we need to chant we are doing first time. Okay, so that thing is not coming because our mind is set up like this. Okay, we need to complete this 16 rounds in this 2 hours, or after that we have other daily works, and that's why. So how can I first focus on this chanting only? Even I'm not able to complete the 16 rounds, but my focus is I need to chant each and every bit, like you told, we need to chant in very gratitude way. So how can I do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to run to work. You have a time restriction. You have to run to work after a certain amount of time. Is that right?
Yes, no, like after 9 we need to do a work, office
Right.
work. So
Right.
like a period is like 4 to 6. Like we try to complete the chanting. So in that way, in this time, like the gratitude which you're talking, like we need very gratitude. So that how we can develop that gratitude, because in our mind our focus is to complete the 16 rounds. So that's why we are doing Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare, Rama Rama Rama. Like this we are doing fast, and sometimes we are doing slow.
Yeah. So the mind has to go deeper, and we have to pray for Krishna's grace before we start. I mean, I know when I chant japa every morning before beginning, I always chant some prayers for Krishna's grace. But again, I would go back to another very practical suggestion that I think, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people in India have a big meal at night and maybe go to sleep a little too late. So if we can maybe not have a big meal late at night, eat something light or earlier, and then get to sleep a little earlier, then I think that precious time, it appears in a magical way. So it's, in a sense, it's about, it's about what priorities do we have in our lives. So I think that's an important answer. What do they say? Early to bed, early to rise. Man,
Yes.
healthy, wealthy, wise. So you can collect. It starts the night before. Whenever, I mean, I know there's some great gurus in India and other parts of the world, like Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He can just be up all night long and show up and do Mangalarti the next morning, wherever he is. But I'm not so much on that great level. So I know for myself, it begins the night before, trying to get to sleep early, not eat such a big meal at night, and then I have more focus in the morning. And then praying to Krishna to help me, because practically we're trying to declare war on the material energy, right? And so we need Krishna's grace. It's those two, but Krishna's grace and my endeavor, but yet what is the impetus for my best endeavor? That kind of crying in gratitude, that looking at all the gifts I've received, that I could be gliding toward a hellish destination without the mercy that I've received from Srila Prabhupada and all our acharyas. So I think that's when gratitude really awakens, when we can remember who I was and where I am now and can be by the grace of all these great devotees.
Thank you, Mataji. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for these wonderful practical tips of. This is something which also stuck to me, that we should have lighter meals and earlier in the evening and not before going to the bed. So Mataji, we have one Damodar Prabhu who is a special child, and he has just written his question. He says that I'm the eternal servant of the Lord, but then why do I become so emotional? And right now in your lecture, he says, I was just crying.
That's beautiful. So we should all learn to cry for Krishna. Gaur Govinda Maharaj used to say that this Krishna consciousness is a crying school. So we have to learn to cry for Krishna. And if we're not crying for Krishna, we have to cry that we're not crying for Krishna, right? So we cry for so many things in this world. We cry that I didn't get enough to eat, or I don't have fancy enough kurta like my friends, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I can learn to cry for Krishna, and that will take me to Krishna's lotus feet. So thank you, Damodar, for your very beautiful question and your very beautiful crying. So just make those tears for Krishna, not for this material world.
Thank you so much, Mataji. I hope we are not taking too much of your time. We have still more devotees who are raising their hands to ask question. Can we take up, Mataji, one more question?
Okay, this is your japa time, but if it's all right with you, it's all right with me.
Yes, Ram Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji Dandavats. Hare Krishna Maharaj Dandavats. Pranams. Hare Krishna to all the Vaishnavas. Thank you so much, Mataji, for your association. Mataji, can you please tell any anecdote or any instruction of Srila Prabhupada which inspires you always and which can always keep us inspired and be in touch with Vaishnavas and with holy name?
Beautiful. Thank you. That's the best question. So I'll tell you my favorite story of Srila Prabhupada. And maybe that will be the end of our session so you can chant your japa. I don't want to interrupt your japa. But Srila Prabhupada was once visiting New Vrindavan, and there was a brand new young man, brand new devotee, and he had the service of being the night guard, the chokidar outside Srila Prabhupada's house where he was staying for a few days. And Srila Prabhupada, started raining outside, so he came into the attached garage and he was doing his guarding service from in there. And then all of a sudden he felt a presence right behind him in the garage. And he turned around and there was Srila Prabhupada standing right behind him. And he offered his obeisances as we would all do. And then when he stood up, he said, Srila Prabhupada, just going to look in this chat here. Yeah, okay, that's Hindi, which I don't understand. So he said, Srila Prabhupada, is there any service I can do for you? And Srila Prabhupada said the most amazing thing. He said, yes, you can go where I will not go. And he was really shocked because Prabhupada was at New Vrindavan in West Virginia. He had just come from maybe Chicago, Texas, California, Japan, and now he's headed to New York, London, Germany, Paris. So he was thinking, but Srila Prabhupada, you go everywhere. Where is it that you won't go? And then Srila Prabhupada said something even more amazing. He said, and I hope if you forget everything I said, please remember this. He said, you can go where I will not go, to the future. Go to the future. And by the way you treat the people there, they will know how much Krishna loves them. So I think that's a super radical personalist, most ecstatic story of Srila Prabhupada. It's my most favorite story of Srila Prabhupada. So go to the future. You're all people of the future. And go to the future. And by the way you treat each and every person in your life, they will know how much Krishna loves them. So thank you all so much for your beautiful awakened Krishna consciousness.
Thank you so very much, Mataji. Your heart is so full of love and compassion and gratefulness. I personally feel like flying to Washington, D.C. and fall down on your lotus feet and bow down 1,000,000 times and take your shelter and take more and more lessons of gratitude from your kindness. So we don't know how to express our gratitude today, but let us try to loudly chant 3 times in ecstasy and gratitude to express our deepest gratitude to Mataji. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
I'm astonished by all your gratitude. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. And let us also express our deepest gratitude to His Holiness Bhakti Ashray Vaishnava Swami Maharaj, under whose guidance we have Mataji here today. Actually, Maharaj only guided Shweta Mataji to invite Rukmini Mataji for this Japa talk today. So we are going to express our deepest gratitude by 3 times chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra from Maharaj. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Ram Ram.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Ram, Hare Ram, Oh, thank you so much.
One small realization, Mataji, just now we always say good morning, good evening, good night. I just, after this wonderful Japa talk today, I feel that we should start to say grateful morning, grateful evening, and a grateful night.
Thank you. Because
everything
one
should-
who is great will be grateful, right? One who is great will be grateful.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for inviting me. Hare Krishna to all of you.
Thank you, Mataji.